special place in the heart for RBS. They control some big budget. So, thanks for having me.
All right. I'll have you know, Suresh is averaging 3 requests a month. All right. Good afternoon. Good to see you all. I'd like to thank our esteemed table of distinguished guests here, Dr. Chancellor Jeffrey Robinson, Dean Nayland, Dr. Suresh Govindaraj, other distinguished faculty, thank you for being here, friends and family, and of course, our esteemed graduates. Congratulations. Bear with me today. I usually give long speeches, but I'll try to. So it's a distinct honor to address you today. Last year, around this time, I was sitting in my DBA hooding ceremony. I was a proud student that just completed his dissertation, and I was quite relieved at the time. And as I sat there, I thought about this young man who was accepted to Rutgers University as an undergrad in the 1990s. He was from modest means, he had very little money, and he didn't have enough money to stay on campus. He would commute to the New Brunswick campus using the New Jersey Transit. His parents were going through a divorce at the time, so that made matters much more difficult. To use the New Jersey Transit, though, he had to, of course, buy a pass or a ticket. And there were many times where he did not have the money to buy a ticket. He would get on the train as a way to get to campus sometimes and hide in the bathroom. Sometimes he would get all the way to campus without incident, but sometimes the conductor would catch him and usher him off the train. But what would he do? He'd wait for the next train, get back and repeat the same series of steps. Sometimes he'd sleep at a friend's dorm room just to avoid the embarrassment and the humiliation of going back home in the same fashion. This was distressing and demoralizing, but he kept going. He eventually graduated, but on his graduation, he didn't actually receive his degree. He still owed the university money. Again, came from very humble means. His dean, a very graceful person, allowed him to walk so that his family could at least see him complete his educational journey. That young man went on and paid off his degree. He went on to Harvard University and graduated with a degree in finance. And he stands before you here today. So those times were hard, and I thought about it as I sat there. And I thought about how much I valued education and how I refused to stop. I couldn't fathom giving up. I just kept going, no matter the cost. And later, I'll tell you why I shared that story. So as I said, about a year ago, I sat in my hooding ceremony, and I thought about those difficult times and how that prepared me to start and finish my doctorate. Knowing it would not be easy, especially having a family and a demanding career. And so at the ripe age, I applied to the Rutgers Doctorate of Business Administration program, and it was life-changing. I learned a few things on my journey. I'll share at least one thing here. Celebrate the pain. And I don't mean to sound like a sadomasochist. Right? I'll explain. To know and appreciate success, you must know failure. Right? Nelson Mandela once said, "Don't judge me by my successes. Judge me by how many times I fell down and got back up again." That's the pain I'm talking about. You have stayed up late nights. You've sacrificed time with your family and friends. Perhaps you argued with your significant others about the things you could not do because you're so busy. It took sacrifice. I'm sure there were times where you became frustrated with your professors sitting in a classroom, 4 o'clock on a Sunday, all right? Trying to reason in what reality will you use a hypergeometric function. My DBAs understand what I'm talking about here. If you did not go through that pain, you could not fully enjoy the fruits of your labor. A wise man, whose name I won't mention, Dr. Suresh Govindara, falling apart here. In my DBA interview, he says to, as a part of the interview, he asks a series of questions. He says, do you want to go to heaven? And I thought to myself, well, I've seen a few documentaries on cults, and that sounds like a cult question. Anyway, I said, of course, I'd like to go to heaven, and he immediately says, well, how do you get to heaven? I said, all right, this is getting weird. And I sat there for a moment, and I thought about it, didn't have an answer, and he intervened and said, well, you have to die to go to heaven. And I immediately understood where he was getting at. He continued to explain how hard and rigorous the program would be. How I would not see my family. Also sounds like a cult thing. But in the end, you will go to heaven. Simply a metaphor for earning your doctorate. I'm happy to report that he was right. 4 or 5 weeks into the first semester, I found myself in the hospital. Turns out I had a panic attack. So much was coming at us. We had to learn complex material and record speeds. The weekends were long, 8:30 to 6:30, you understand, Saturday and Sunday, then going back to work on Monday, consumed in the evenings with complex material, learning calculus again. And I remember thinking, now I know why Suresh asked that question. Because he's trying to kill us. But in those moments, I learned how to think like a researcher, how to read research papers with a critical eye, how to analyze and synthesize large quantities of data. The experience deepened my analytical abilities so that I can now use that talent in my own professional work, in my own research. It taught me how to embrace failure, how to embrace cognitive dissonance, how to hold two opposing thoughts in your head and apply a cogent argument and defend either position. And out of this pain and frustration, I learned that the discomfort comes along with learning and academic inquiry, but can bring excitement and satisfaction and success. Which brings me to my next point. As DBAs, you've been endowed with a special set of skills. You came to the program as practitioners, and you leave as scholar practitioners, or I like to say thinker-doers. To complement your professional skills, you've learned the art and technicalities of research, and how to produce new knowledge by reviewing large volumes of literature, defining your methods for research, conducting a rigorous analysis to test your hypothesis. These are durable skills that you can use for the rest of your life. These are skills that will position you as a thinker-doer, scholar practitioner, to put new knowledge into practice. So I mentioned earlier that I would tell you why I shared that story in the beginning. As a boy, I heard stories about my parents and how they immigrated to this country. They had no money. However, they knew that education was one of the few ways that you can change your circumstances. Unfortunately, if you're from the inner city, a good education is hard to come by. They did everything they can to make sure I put education first, to give me access. That simply wasn't easy. My experiences growing up in Brooklyn, New York, could have led me down a very different path. I dealt with the scourge of the crack epidemic that ravaged my neighborhood. I remember kicking crack valves down the street on my way home. Friends that were unfortunately killed. being robbed and chased. I even remember a burglar trying to get into my apartment while I was alone home at 9 years old, while waiting for my mother to arrive home from work. Access. Access to a good education. That's what my father would say. That's the key, and I took it seriously. Those experiences, coupled with the skills and knowledge I earned in pursuing my doctorate, are what drives me in my profession and research to build and support financial and behavioral frameworks that provide access to economically disadvantaged students and other populations. As a scholar, practitioner, or thinker, doer, as I said, that is my mission. So I leave you with this. Keep going. I like Nelson Mandela, so I'm going to quote him again. Nelson Mandela said, "After climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb." Right? You've climbed your DBA hill, but there's more to do. Now that you're DBAs, you've endured the crucible. You've joined a league that only 1% of the population can claim. What will you do with it? I challenge you to keep climbing and use your skills and knowledge to improve the world. There's no shortage of challenges, whether that be climate change, food deserts, mental health deserts, access to healthcare, access to housing, access to good education, just to name a few. But for the moment, savor the rarefied air that you breathe as newly minted doctors. Live in the moment, bask in it. You no doubt have accomplished something extraordinary. You've suffered, you've died, figuratively, and you're here now. So welcome to heaven. I'm not done, I said it would be long. So now I have the pleasure and the distinct honor to introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. Lennox H. Small. I just have a few words to say. Dr. Lennox Small is a seasoned educator with over 25 years of experience in a variety of roles in several school districts. He served as a middle and high school classroom teacher, a department chairperson, a vice principal, a district level administrator, and a school principal. Dr. Small currently leads the South Campus of College Achieve Charter Schools in Plainfield, New Jersey. As a scholar, Dr. Small has centered his research on closing the achievement and opportunity gaps that will enhance the academic arenas for all students. Dr. Small has several awards that evidence his dedication to excellence. These awards include a National Consortium for Teaching About Asia by Princeton University. He's been a grant recipient at the John Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University, a recipient of the Fulbright Hayes Fellowship in Southern Africa, where he's visited Eswatini, formerly known as Swaziland, South Africa, Lesotho, and Mozambique. His scholarly pursuits impact has been global. In his role, he spent 2 months in South Africa conducting research and writing curriculum with teachers in various secondary schools and universities throughout the region. He was selected as a U.S. educator delegate to China, and this was an opportunity for him to travel across China and form partnerships. He's also a part of the Rutgers family and community. He served as an adjunct professor at the Graduate School of Education. He served on the board of the New Jersey Public Policy Research Institute, based at the Baustein School for Planning and Public Policy, and on the board of the Rutgers University Graduate School of Education Advisory Council. He's taken his talents to Seton Hall as an adjunct professor. And if that wasn't enough, he currently serves as a vice chairman and commissioner of the Edison Housing Authority. Dr. Small received a BA from Rutgers University, an MA from Columbia University, and another master's in educational administration from Keene University. And he completed his doctorate in educational and organizational leadership at the University of Pennsylvania. So, it is without further ado, and my distinct pleasure to introduce a scholar, a leader, and my dear friend, Dr. Lennox H. Small.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Can you hear me okay? Yes. Chancellor Dr. Robinson, Dean Nayland, Dr. Govindaraj, members of the committee who invited me here, welcome. Vice Chancellor Nayland Smith, families and friends, and more importantly, to the folks of the hour, the graduates of the class of 2024. Good afternoon. So I'm a teacher at heart, and classroom participation is a must for every class that I participate in. Those who don't pay attention will receive detention. So, there are 4 doctoral norms that I need to go over with the class that they may or may not have shared with you, but I'm going to share with you today. Item number 1, breathe in. Follow me, breathe in. Breathe out. One more time, breathe in. Breathe out. When you have a doctorate, the oxygen and the air you breathe is different. Because now you can read a book of your choice, not just for an assignment. You are no longer pondering about your lit review. And you can breathe because you are no longer thinking about your qualitative and quantitative research and how you'll be coding. Item number 2, I want you to look to my left, look at Dr. Robinson and Dr. Nayland Smith. Because when you get a doctorate over a period of time, you become better looking. I've known them since undergrad, and trust me when I tell you, once they got their doctorate, all of a sudden, they became better looking. I do have qualitative data in the form of old pictures to prove my point. No need for that. Number 3, you must have a doctoral lab. A doctoral lab is an intellectual lab. Let me demonstrate. That's a doctoral lab. You can use it in any setting, but you must have a doctoral lab. And finally, number 4, before we jump into our subject for today, I need all of you graduates to turn and find your family and friends, blow them a kiss, and tell them thank you. When I was a kid, one of the movies that I really liked was Back to the Future. For those who do not know about the movie, it was starring actor Michael J. Fox. He was using a time machine, which was a DeLorean car, to go back in time and return to the present to give us a sense of things to come in the future. It was a science fiction film that married science and history and technology. So today, class, I want you to take a ride with me for a moment in a DeLorean. But because of the size of this group, we're going to ride in a DeLorean bus. So let's use our creative energy. We're going to go back to the 18th century. Our major stop and visit is to a warm, humid day in 1787 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, outside Constitution Hall. It's the last day of a convention where a select group of men are gathered to be part of this great experiment called the United States of America. The men inside were grappling with ideas for months to determine the future of this new nation. And they were engaged in a process of writing the United States Constitution. When one of the delegates, Benjamin Franklin, stepped outside, he was met with anxious and large groups of people. They were all asking questions, and in the midst of all of the dialogue, a woman by the name of Mrs. Powell emerged from the crowd. She asked what I consider one of the most profound questions in this nation's history. She said, "Dr. Franklin, what type of government do we have?" Without missing a beat, the senior delegate of the convention responded by stating, "A republic, if we can keep it. A republic, if we can keep it. As I think back about that setting, it makes sense to me that Mrs. Powell would pose that question. Perhaps, like many in her day, she was wary of the possibility of a new monarchy, given that they were only 11 years removed from the American Revolution. As a woman, was she inquiring about the role of her and other women in this republic? Or maybe the plight of the indigenous people of the land? Maybe she was speaking on behalf of those who were enslaved at the time and did not have a voice present. Maybe she was asking about how this new document and the republic would impact generations of the future. Maybe she was concerned about the legacy and framework they were going to leave behind. As we make our way back to the 21st century in our DeLorean bus, we will travel through and see the Civil War, the Emancipation Proclamation, Jim Crow, World War I, Chinese Exclusion Act, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the Civil Rights Movement. And in that time period during the Civil Rights Movement, we're gonna go global and go to Africa and throughout Asia and the Caribbean, and we're gonna see the downfall of colonialism. So as we return to the present, 19 days after a very contentious presidential election and back to this ceremony, Mrs. Powell's question and Benjamin Franklin's response still resonate. What type of government do we have? A republic, if we can keep it. So with that as the backdrop, class, and foundation for today's class, our word for today, just like Sesame Street always has a word. And I tried, class, but your word for today, the best I can come up with, is if. And our accompanying topic is embracing the power of discomfort. For today's lesson, I thought about making the word something inspirational like diligence and ingenuity and perseverance or resilience. But the only word that kept surfacing was if. If is used to discuss a possibility, a condition, or a stipulation. It can also be found in several categories. And I've created several categories for you. If is a cousin of maybe. There is the regretful if. This if forces one to examine one's shortcomings and mistakes. They embrace a life of cyclical doubt and uncertainty. Folks in this if are skilled and talented, and it is Sunday, so I'm going to use a spiritual connotation. They are ordained to make excuses and to complain. That is their only contribution to their community. If can be reflective. This can be a dangerous category. While you may not embrace negative vibes, this category can keep you sheltered. Many people in this category are often stuck on their past accomplishments and glory. They are blinded by their false optimism that the past of the good old days will be resurrected and will be restored. The final category of if is if can be transformational. This category has the smallest membership, but the greatest influence. They're not concerned with the fads of the day and being defined by their peers. They're not afraid to be the minority or the sole voice. This group is not relegated to race or class or gender. This is an inquiry-based approach and group, and they're on a constant quest of excellence. They challenge themselves before others have a chance to. So in this time of uncertainty, when we contemplate many ifs, I contend that graduates, you are at the right time in our nation's and global history, armed with the necessary skills to tackle many of our societal ills. The mood of the time may get us to ask, are we entering a new domestic Cold War, where we have more fear than faith, more fiction than friendship, more factions than family, and more conflict than community? This concept of if is accompanied by discomfort is certainly not new to you. Because when you started this journey to get your doctorates, you started with if, and it was followed by you measuring all of the discomforts that could emerge, including challenges with family time, the financial investment, the halt on social activities, and career responsibilities, among others. Just to go back, in my senior year of undergrad in New Brunswick, Rutgers, New Brunswick, while I was assessing the next chapter of my life, I read a book that had nothing to do with any of the courses I was taking at the time. The book was Savage Inequalities by Jonathan Kozol. In the book, Kozol traveled throughout the country documenting all of the vast inequities that existed in many public schools. He even focused on several schools in New Jersey and right here in Essex County. He mentioned in detail some of the dire circumstances of a particular high school, located exactly 5.2 miles from this building. He also indicated the bleak future of the students who had to be educated in that environment. I thought to myself, what a sad state of affairs. Until at the end of the description, I realized he was talking about my high school and mentioned it by name. The last 2 years of my high school were here in New Jersey. And here was a senior at Rutgers realizing that I was educated in an arena of savage inequalities. Yet somehow I was able to overcome the hurdles of resource deficiency. At that moment, I realized that I had found my life's calling and work. Over the last 20 years, as an educator and in my doctoral research, it has centered on attacking and annihilating savage inequalities in our public schools. In the summer of 2023, I took 24 of my high school students to spend a part of their summer taking courses at Oxford University in the UK. We traveled across the pond to take part in a partnership with several schools that we call the Summer of a Lifetime program. This partnership includes the likes of Rutgers, Princeton, Harvard, Stanford, Oxford, among others. By all accounts, it was a life-changing experience for all the participants. The work of psychologists Caitlin Woolley and Aileen Fishback and other neuroscientists suggests that embracing discomfort is a driving force to learning, enlightenment, and growth. In K-12 education, however, we have become discomfort avoiders. In K-12 education, we have a curriculum warfare, and folks are battling what should and should not be taught. The truth is, we really should be talking about the silent epidemic of who's going to be teaching. Not what is going to be taught, but who is going to teach. This nation has a severe teacher shortage, which is threatening every aspect of our infrastructure. I believe that one of the ways to solve this issue is to have social entrepreneurs, similar to the work that Dr. Robinson has been spearheading, and you, graduates, should be at the center of that. As new doctoral recipients, you've heard it over and over. You have to lead in academia, the corporate boardroom, nonprofit, entrepreneurship, government leadership, artificial intelligence, to name a few. You are expected to have a different answer. Just to go back even further, during my teen years, my cousins and I spent summers with my Uncle Pat. My Uncle Pat in Ohio, he's one of my heroes, still remains one of my heroes. I remember seeing him in the middle of the night studying and writing. When I was 15, I was fortunate to see my uncle at his hooding ceremony, defending his dissertation. Several months later, I was there when he graduated. In his dissertation, he dedicated his dissertation to my grandmother, his two sons, my cousins, and to me. And he wrote each of us a separate note, handwritten note. He said to Lennox, hope that one day I'll have an opportunity to read your dissertation. Best wishes to you as you pursue your education. My Uncle Pat, like you, received his DBA, and he didn't do so bad afterwards. He was a business school professor, dean of several business schools, vice provost, and vice president at a few schools. He said he never wanted to be president. That's for another discussion. Some of the schools include Howard University, Fisk University, the University of Toledo, and Virginia Tech, to name a few. He was also a Fulbright Fellow and did postgraduate work at Harvard School of Business. He has sat on too many boards to mention and has presented his work and research in over 30 countries. He has been and continues to be an inspiration for me. His journey gave me a vision of what I could do with my life, and I would reread his dissertation, his dedication, over and over in moments of low times. I attended middle school in Brooklyn, New York. And when I think about it, I'm often asked the question, was it hard to get adopted? And when I'm posed that question, I have to always do a rewind. So as I said, I attended middle school in Brooklyn, New York. I did my first years of high school in Brooklyn, and then my last years of high school, as I mentioned before, here in New Jersey. I went to Rutgers, New Brunswick, and while at Rutgers, I was very active. I was in a student government. I saved up somehow and bought a car. Wasn't much of a car, cost $1,700, but it was my car. Didn't have an engine. I was president of my fraternity. I was active in the community. I was tutoring young kids in New Brunswick after school. I was involved in many campus activities with professors and those in leadership. Some of the deans and department chairs knew me on a first-name basis. They met with me one-on-one and encouraged me to go to graduate school and said they would offer to write my letters of recommendation, which they did. I had a pretty girlfriend. And I want to be clear, let me pause right there. I had a pretty girlfriend that I later married. She's here. I graduated in May. And in that September, I was in graduate school. I went to Columbia for my master's. So at that time, if you looked at me, you would have said, this guy had the all-American experience. Except I wasn't. Technically, I was not American. The whole time during middle school, high schools, undergrad, my master's at Columbia, I was an undocumented immigrant. I'm sorry, let me pause. I was an illegal alien because that term, undocumented, that's the new PC term. I was an illegal alien. So, class, I say that to say, I'm a resident expert on the power of embracing discomfort. I know firsthand the discomfort, pain, and trauma of what it means to be an undocumented immigrant, and to still find ways to survive with a smile on the outside while existing with the pain on the inside. So to answer the question, it wasn't hard to get a doctorate. I'm a cyclist, so I've ridden many 100-mile rides. Riding a 100-mile ride is hard. Running a 26-mile marathon is hard. But from where I started to get a doctorate, it was like going through hell. But I've learned through my life and my journey that if you're going through hell, don't stop. Don't hang out there. Don't ponder hellish culture. Keep going. Exactly 0.6 miles from this building, at the federal building on Broad Street, several years later after my master's, I did become a naturalized U.S. citizen. So Newark, New Jersey is my naturalized citizenship place of birth. Whatever the challenges and hurdles that you had to overcome, you have made it, and you are here. However, the journey is not over. Now is the time for your next chapter. When you embrace discomfort, you control the narrative. The discomfort should not direct you. So all of you graduates, each of you here today, because you've embraced the power of discomfort and you know how to navigate the terrain, it is impossible to get a doctorate otherwise. You don't need me to tell you that. I'm just here to reinforce it. Like my Uncle Pat, each of you is a source of inspiration. When Benjamin Franklin said, if we can keep it, he understood that there was a need for constant growth. And comfort was the enemy of growth. After all, he was a Renaissance man. He never compartmentalized his thinking. His ideas were fluid. He was a founding father, a scientist, a printer, an entrepreneur, and in his spare time, he founded the University of Pennsylvania, one of the 9 colonial colleges founded before the formation of the United States of America. And today, graduates, you are graduating from another one of those 9 colonial colleges, Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey. Graduates, continue to examine your ifs and continue to embrace the power of discomfort. Congratulations and happy Thanksgiving.
Well, I guess our speakers reflect what our DBA program is all about. One thing I'd say, I agree with both Dr. doctors that, what kind of trials and tribulations they have been through in life and where they come now. And I also learned from Dr. Small that we share schools. He went to Columbia and Penn. I went to Penn and Columbia, the other way around. So we have a lot of things in common. And some of the stories he said, I have experienced myself, so I know what he's talking about. The one thing I would say is the DBA is a great degree. You're a doctorate now, a doctor, addressed as doctor. But there's so many things we don't really know. So it's best to stay humble. More importantly, I hope each one of you will spend some time giving back to educating underprivileged people, even if it means taking extra time out, maybe high school, maybe community college, maybe any university. So that's one request I do have, and that kind of reflects what we are all about. I mean, it's not just about being in a corporate world where all you want to be is the corner office or whatever. It's something else. And when I said we are very selective, I think we have a pretty good idea of what kind of people we want in the program. All of you are talented, we know you done very well. But there's something extra. I get requests from people who want to get in. What does it take to get in? And there are people who are surprised when we don't take them. It's a little strength of character. And that's why, all of you are here. And also, once again, I repeat, it's like amazing that you have 100% graduation rate and the bonds that you have formed. I hope you stay in touch with each other and continue to contribute to society. Publish, that's of course important. But more important, try to do something for society with all the knowledge you got here. And one more thing, since you're like what is the Hotel California, you check in, you never check out. So you'll always be part of us, always. So anytime you come back, you want to continue education, we're always there to help you. And I hope you will take advantage of that. You'll always be a part of our family. So with that, congratulations again to all our graduates. Wonderful. Now comes the really important part of the ceremony. I'm going to call out the names one by one of our graduates. So I'll read out the thesis name, and the advisor will follow them and prove them as I call out the names.